Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. Glad to have you with us today, and I hope you're doing well as we come into the end of this year. And it's been a crazy year, of course, but looking forward to our conversation. Before we jump into that, though, I will remind you, as I remind you every single week, go to our YouTube channel if you have not. Maybe you're listening to the podcast or over at Mojo50. Thank you for listening wherever it is you're listening from. But when this is over, take some time. Go to YouTube, look up the Mighty Oaks Foundation. You'll find our channel there, and you can subscribe. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe and hit the notification bell. Subscribing is good. Hitting the notification bell is better. That lets you know when more content comes online, and we're constantly putting out new content, even over this holiday season, coming out of the year and getting into a new one. New content is coming online all of the time, and that can be a blessing to you and a help to those that you know. So hit the notification bell and leave comments, share it out. That would be fantastic. All right, we're going to jump into our conversation today, and today is a little bit different than the shows we normally have. Normally, it's a one-on-one conversation, and we're talking about some specific topic. Today, wanted to do something a little bit different. We have several gentlemen here with us today. Actually, they're not here with us today. They're at home across the country with us today. And these are guys that I work with and have the opportunity to serve with through the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And again, if you're watching this show, you've heard about the Mighty Oaks Foundation and the work that we do. But we work with veterans, active duty service members, and first responders, all dealing with life issues, many of them dealing with trauma related to their service, many just dealing with trauma related to life. And we have the opportunity to serve hundreds of folks a year, and thankful to do that. And this is a part of the team that makes that happen. And glad that these guys would jump on with me today. And just want to walk through some questions and some thoughts that I trust will be an encouragement to you. Here with me in studio is Brandon Kunit, and you're familiar with Brandon, I'm sure. He is our National Programs Director with the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Also on the line, we have Luis Rivera. Many of you are familiar with Luis as well. In fact, one of our most watched videos on our channel is the testimony of Luis, and I don't know why. I always ask, why would anybody watch it? I don't know why they would, but it's one of the most watched videos on our channel, and you need to go check that out if you haven't. Luis is our operations manager, specifically working with our programs. Also, Kevin Schroeder, who is our programs training manager, and Kevin is a former Marine, retired law enforcement, and in addition to working with training our team leaders, serves in the capacity of leading teams and leading programs, and does an incredible job there. Bill Coate is also here. He's kind of the grand old man of not the Marine Corps, but the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Bill serves here on the West Coast as our West Coast session facilitator. Bill retired from the Marine Corps after 32 years? 32 years. 33 years. 30 years? He's just using hand and arm signals instead of saying anything. So he doesn't like to talk. It's going to be a fun conversation with Bill. But 30 years and retired as a colonel, which he does not like to have mentioned because of his beard, I think. But that's Bill. Also with us, Hunter Robichaux. Many of you are familiar with Hunter, and of course Chad and Kathy. Hunter is our donor relations manager, and glad to have him on our team as well. So looking forward to a great conversation. And again, this is a little bit different. I have 6 questions, and I'm going to throw these questions out, and you guys can answer them. And I hope, again, my goal is that this would be an encouragement to the folks who are listening or watching. So question number 1, Brandon, we'll begin with you.
Great.
What has been one of your biggest challenges this year? So we'll start with Brandon and then go around the horn. What is one of your biggest challenges this year? What has been?
I would probably say narrowing that question down to one thing.
Okay, narrowing it down to
No,
it's been a year full of problems.
I would probably say it kind of just falls under staying disciplined and motivated with just day-to-day events, because you can get easily caught up in not doing anything. And once that door kind of gets, cracked, it could be very hard to close it from time to time of, not knowing what the next day is going to bring, or not having anything to do because of you can't go anywhere, you can't spend time with other people, and all those things, and it just kind of snowball effects to where you lose the hope or any kind of motivation to do anything.
Right. Yeah, struggling with motivation. I think back in March, April, all of us kind of hit a wall and just went, fine, we're not going to do anything. Yeah. But then you have to pick up. We were told 15 days to flatten the curve, and it's been like 9 months. Yeah, so you can't just keep not doing anything.
And that's the other part of it is not knowing. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So you can't plan, or the goalpost seems to be the popular term, but the goalpost kept moving and moving, or flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. Well, I mean, it was like, okay, when is it going to end? When's enough's going to be enough? Or finally got to the point where we said on our side, okay, enough's enough. And for me, I really took that hard look at looking at, okay, and we know what we can't do, but what can we actually do? And that really brought me out of my own funk, if you will, to bring me back online and do what we need to do.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Bill, from your perspective, what is one of the biggest challenges that you've had this year, personally, or
I was pretending like you're
part of the
only
community
talking
that may be struggling?
I think isolation probably is the biggest challenge, because even in Mighty Oaks, we talk about never fight alone, no man fights alone.
Yeah.
And this whole isolation process, I'd say that's the biggest challenge. It is staying connected where you need to stay connected, living your life the way you're created to live your life. And the truth of it is I probably shouldn't go there, but I think that we all believe that to live is Christ and to die is gain, but that's not how we're living.
Yeah,
we're living. People are more apt to do something out of fear than they are principle. And what we've done is we've isolated the population. We've made them afraid of an invisible virus. We've made them afraid of their neighbor. We've masked up, gloved up, shut down, and I don't know, maybe you guys see this too, but people are generally angry. They have this mask on. It gets rid of some of their inhibitions to actually even be polite to other people.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd say isolation, but
yeah, isolation is a pit you can fall into too. I don't think anyone wants to be isolated, but once you get there, it's really hard to start digging your way out. It's comfortable in a weird way, which is why we fight against it so much, right? Is because it's so dangerous. Kevin, what's from your perspective one of the biggest challenges this year?
Well, I guess coming out of the rut of being comfortable. Before COVID, I was just had this routine going. We have one that's still in high school, our youngest, and I just had everything set in place like I like it. This is when I travel to a session. This is how home should be. And then that was disrupted like overnight, where we were looking at homeschooling a 16-year-old, which having to see him on a regular basis, love the kid, but he presents some challenges. And then also too, just with Rachel and just the unknown. And then, our daughter's in college, she still lives with us. So we were just kind of boxed in, we were looking at each other. It's like, wow, I love you, but I don't know if I like you as much as I should. So it was just, it was really we were put to the test on like community in the home, and, just really kind of coming together as a family. It wasn't, I'm not trying to say that it was all bad by any means. We definitely were able to connect more and stuff like that, but it was change for us, is I guess what I'm trying to get at. And, it was kind of challenging at first.
Yeah. Luis, what about you?
Yeah, mine's a little bit different. So as an organization, we've been still doing programs or trying to get programs online. And because of the pandemic, programs had to be shut down. Commitments that were made by applicants, we had to, I'm trying to assist John Davis applicants
applications coordinator and trying to get recommitments of guys coming to another program. And on the applicant side, they kind of just lose motivation to have these expectations of coming to a program, and because of the pandemic, just trying to get that recommitment and just coming up with ways to keep those guys going was a real challenge for me and the team that I'm helping out. Our outreach coordinator Neil Grogan and applications coordinator John Davis.
Yeah. Hunter, you're the youngest guy on this call, but you're also kind of the unattached guy, which I think is an interesting perspective. My kids, but for those that don't, I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, and to see them go through this season has been very different than watching, other people go through it because of kind of what's important and your priorities and those kind of things. What has been one of the biggest challenges for you this year?
Definitely this year has been really challenging for me. I hopped on the Mighty Oaks team in January of this year, and going into Mighty Oaks full time was wild. It was definitely something I've always wanted to do, but finding God's purpose this year and what God wanted me to do and the steps that He wanted me to take was definitely a challenge, especially with coming back from a deployment and then coming straight into the U.S. where we have this COVID problem.
Yeah.
Isolation is something that is definitely not something we want in our community. And that's something we all had to do with COVID, with the COVID lockdowns. So I would say isolation and then finding God's purpose and plan for me during this year.
So Hunter, I'll go to the next question. You can answer first. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned this year?
So God used me in a position that I never thought I would be in. I never thought I would be in a donor relations type of role in my life. I always thought like I was going to be like the knuckle dragger in Mighty Oaks doing like the cool instructor work all the time. But Neil Grogan told me something this year and it stuck with me. God has us in a certain role and in a certain position for a reason. And we're in that position to grow. And I think during this year, the people that are in isolation and the people that are going through these hard things, we're not going through these problems and these struggles for no reason. God has us going through these struggles so that we can grow and that we can come out stronger.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brandon, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned this year?
The importance of community.
Community.
Yeah, and it all ties into what everybody else has been talking about is, isolation and that sense of purpose, and staying on track with your day-to-day stuff. And when the wrench is thrown in there, being able to adjust fire as needed. But, it's hard to pull yourself out of a hole or bounce back when it's just you. So, but at the same time, it gets really comfortable in that new environment where there's really nothing to look forward to, and you can take your time in the morning. You're not rushing out the door and yelling at your daughter because she's still not ready, and you should have left 30 minutes ago.
Sure.
It's like the same thing. We're always the same amount of time late to church on Sunday every morning, even though we know we were supposed to leave at a very specific time.
I've lived this as well.
So
it's a fairly common problem, I think.
You take some kind of enjoyment that you don't have that stress.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're wanting that back and you needing it back because you really see how important it is and how much God designed us to be with one another and to be in fellowship. Just when we started going to the parking lot and having our services in the parking lot and the Wednesday fellowship that we do, that was something that we looked forward to so much. And just even recently, because of recent events and lockdowns and stuff, like we've had to go back to shutting it down and adjusting all over again.
Yeah.
So it's that roller coaster. It's just
the importance of community.
Yeah.
Kevin, what about you? One of the things I appreciate about you, Kevin, and there's many things, but is that you're always learning, you're always growing, and you're always communicating what you're learning with others. What is one of the big lessons or the big things that you've learned this year?
It's just highlighted to me where our hope comes from, between COVID and this whole election process. Like I said, life hasn't gone how I wanted it to. And I was just reminded that we were not promised a bed of roses on this earth. And it just drove home to me that no matter what, no matter who the president is, no matter how long we have to deal with this COVID-19, that our hope lies in Christ, and He's in control, and none of this surprises Him. So
Yeah.
it just really just drives home the fact to me that where my hope come from, and it brings a lot of peace.
That's good. Luis?
Yeah, the one thing I would say it's not new, but it's probably the biggest lesson I've learned this year is that whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm struggling with, I can always find freedom from that whenever I get to the truth about anything. I think that's what people want the most is the truth, no matter whether it's about God or myself or this election or whatever. It's always found there's freedom from that when you get to the truth.
That's good. What about you, Bill? You've taught me so much over the years, and I always appreciate your perspective. What's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned or maybe relearned this year?
Well, I would say that I'm in the process of kind of walking through this, and I call it trust. In Psalms 37, verse 3, it says, "Trust Him, do good, dwell in the land, and feed on its faithfulness." And what I've seen over the years, everything that you trust in this physical present world, it's been pulled out from underneath you. Right. And so for me, it's just this walk of, okay, I get this, in my spirit, this like, I feel like He's saying, you trust me, this anxiety will rise up in me. Right. And this is all, with the fear that's going on too, because fear is a spirit, In Timothy, he says, "I have not given you the spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind." I haven't had anxiety in years. This thing created anxiety in me. And so I feel like the Lord kind of saying, do you trust me? And then the other part of it is do good, right? So I don't wear masks, and I go into places, and if they kick me out, I'm polite to them, I say, well, I thought maybe you needed the business. Amazon will deliver it to my house for cheaper.
Even in Montana.
I say, I served my nation for 30 years, and you don't have anything in here that's worth me giving up an ounce of my freedom or whatever, but I'm nice to them. But my point is it's hard sometimes to be good and to trust Him, because we've got to this whole point of being ridiculous. But I guess I would say my big thing is trust Him, because everything you see in this world, we've been shown over the last 9 months, we can't trust Him. But we can trust Him because He is faithful.
One of the when I learn something new that really sticks to me and I get a hold of it, those become truths that I want to communicate with other people. And it's almost like I'm chasing people down. I chase my wife around the house. I sit my kids down and nobody wants to hear what I have to say, but I'm just so excited about it. And I feel like it can change their lives. There's been a few moments this year where I've maybe not learned something, but realized something. And I'm like, man, I got to share this with other people. So that's the question. But Bill, you were talking about this before we started, even with, as it relates to leadership and how important that is. Maybe that's not your thing this year, but what is something that you've learned that you have to communicate to people? If they're going to stop long enough to listen to you, you're going to talk about it.
To me, it's to fear not, because I think, well, you and I've had these conversations a lot. I think you can't really have real leadership unless you have a real moral, solid foundation, right? But the other thing is, I wrote this blog the other day, and I didn't put it out. I have to read it to you, because it came out of Jeremiah 30. It says, "For thus says the Lord, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Ask now and see whether a man is ever in labor with child. So why do I see every man with his hands on his loins like a woman in labor, and all the faces turn pale? Alas, for the day is great, so that none is like it. And it is the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." And it's kind of kind of a weird way of looking at it, but in leadership in men, why are men collapsing in the face of adversity? There's not peace, there's terror, there's tremor. People are walking around in utter fear for their lives. And where are we to lead them out of that? If, we know who God is.
Yeah.
We know he's faithful. We know he's always been faithful. And it's time we stand up instead of being in the fetal position, or, like God says, do men give babies? This is a challenge. It's time to stand up and act like men.
Yeah, that's good. Act like men. Even if you're a woman, somebody's got to stand up and act like a man. Luis, what's one of the lessons that you just have to share with as many people as possible?
I think that this thing never gets old, and I get this from Kevin, really, that I think we have to educate ourselves always, and if that means utilizing different sources, that's what we do. I think this year especially, I've learned that I even have to pay attention to what's not being said. I have to gather as much information as I can and pay attention to what's not being said. And I learned a lot through that. So continue to educate myself. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Kevin?
The first thing that comes to mind, and it seemed like, I heard it a lot when I was younger. You turn on the TV, you'd see Billy Graham, and what came out of his mouth all the time is God loves you. And it just doesn't seem like we're hearing that a lot lately. And we get real performance based, and we really start to question that a lot, even as Christians. And I just want people to know. I tell guys at sessions, when we talk about why men need to fight, and one of the reasons is that person that's looking back at you in the mirror, because God loves you. He has a plan for you.
Yeah, that's good. Hunter, what about you?
I would say trusting God. That's a huge thing for me right now, and especially this year. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." I think God in this time is going to direct your path and lead you into the ultimate comfort, and that's coming from Christ.
That's good. Brandon?
Yeah, it's pretty much along same lines as everybody else, but just hope, and not just hope, but where it comes from. And that hope that we can trust, that it never changes, and not what feels good at this moment or seems to be the right thing at the moment, but where we truly find hope that will bring us to a point that will bring us out of whatever is going on at that time, and understanding what that hope carries through this election, through COVID, through financial issues. I mean, it's unreal to see so many businesses closing and families just being torn apart on so many different levels because of the lack of hope. There's just complete absence of hope. People are screaming, the world's going to burn down because this person doesn't get an office, and this person is in their business that they fought for many years and is completely collapsed because of one person's decision or lack of decisions. All of that being said, there is still hope out there. Christ is where we find it, and all these things on earth. The saying that I don't know who said it, but all these things that we have, the material possessions, the money in our bank account and everything like that, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse.
Right.
So having things is cool, and making sure that we're taking care of our families and stuff like that, but are you taking care of your eternity? But hope.
Yeah, that's good. Kevin, this next question, I'll start with you. It's specific maybe to the work that we do, but definitely a perspective. The question is this: what are some of the unique challenges to the veteran and first responder community during this season? And this year has been crazy because there's been the isolation aspect of the COVID thing, But then on the law enforcement side, the first responder side, there's been so much, as it relates to the defund the police movement and all these other things that we've talked about. It's been such a complex year for people that are in the community that we serve. And we know there's a real impact. I don't know if we'll ever know the full impact. We know on in the active duty community, we've been told that during the period from basically the end of March through, I think, July, active duty suicides went up 20, 30%. I would imagine on the veteran side, it's the same. We see police departments where police officers are just walking off the job. They're saying, I can't do this anymore. Certainly there have been real impacts. With the folks that you talk to, the folks that you work with, what are some of those unique challenges in these communities, the veteran and first responder community? Kevin?
I would say the biggest one right now is morale, especially just coming off the heels of a first responder session a couple months ago. A lot of the guys there, we had a good mixture of police officers and firemen, close to 30 guys. And, a lot of them were saying, I want out, I'm done, I'm out of this. And I just wanted to challenge them. I said, look, I don't know what God has in store for you when you leave here, but, one of the purposes of our programs is to build some resiliency, because being a veteran, being a first responder, it's still a noble profession. And, you're doing good work out there. And, God has a purpose for you in that. You have opportunities, a platform to give hope. And, I just want to tell these guys to stay in the fight. If God calls you out of it, then that's what he's doing. But if he wants you to stay in it, then be there for him.
Yeah, that's good. Bill, what do you see as some of the unique challenges? You have the advantage maybe of longevity and perspective, seeing many changes over the time that you served through the military, but this is probably unlike many of the other things that you experienced or saw. What are some of the unique challenges that our folks are dealing with right now?
Again, I'd probably get back to leadership. I have a nephew who's a firefighter, and was talking to him about, and their issue really isn't with their job day to day. Their issue is how they respond to things because of mandates from higher authority. Like how they respond, how they dress, how they, how they interact in a firehouse. And I just found it interesting because I think this is unlike anything I've seen in my life ever. And I think I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're the guy working in the gas station or military or first responder. This is just put so much pressure on people, and we weren't created to act this way, and we're being forced to act a certain way that we were never created to. So I think this, I don't know. I really don't have an answer to that, except because I think this is a unique time in our history. Yeah. And I think we have to go back to doing what we know is right inside the core of us.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's like what Kevin said. We have to love people. We have to love them and show them hope, because there's no hope anywhere else. Yeah. And people out here, they don't even know what they believe in for the most part. You can ask them and they have no idea what they believe in. Just go out tomorrow and ask somebody a question, and it'll absolutely turn their world upside down, because they'll start to tell you what they believe, and before they're done, they stop. Yeah. Because they realize, I really don't believe that. So I would say the unique thing is people today don't know what they believe and what they believe in.
Yeah, the program, we talk about this sometimes, that if you don't understand who you are, you're like that ship that's not tied to anything, and you're just being tossed to and from. The Bible talks about that as well. And so many people are right there. Luis, what are some of the unique challenges for the veteran and first responder community?
Yeah, I would say that one thing, because we're all Christians, we understand we have a common enemy, and one of his tactics is to try to isolate, whether it's through the pandemic, whether it's through what's going on in their own communities, something they've experienced. The tendency for first responders and veterans is to isolate, and they think they can find the answer there. So a challenge would be to avoid isolation. Just goes along with what Brandon said about staying in community. I know for me, if I don't have a community, if I don't have somebody I'm accountable to, the chances of me making the wrong decision is high. So I stay connected to Kevin, and I stay connected to Bill and Robert, Kale, and you guys. so that I can have somebody to talk to and just check my thinking, check what I'm saying, and allow them to just speak into my life what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. So it doesn't change. The enemy's tactic is always the same, always try to isolate. So I think the biggest challenge is to avoid that isolation and stay in community.
Yeah, that's good. Hunter?
Spot on with what you guys are saying. Isolation and hopelessness are definitely a challenge for our veterans and first responders right now. They are with brothers constantly, and then they're told to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then they get isolated, or they're in this certain situation where they're stuck in their house for 9 months. This is a really hard situation, and just like Bill said, this is a situation that has never been seen in history, and we're slowly learning and overcoming and adapting in this situation.
Yeah. Brandon, a different question, but hearing this made me think of this question because we get asked this all the time. I have a family member who is a veteran or who's serving in the military or who is in the first responder community. What can I do to help them? And I think probably that question needs to be answered now, maybe more than ever. So start with that. What can I do as a family member? I haven't served, but I have folks that I care about that are or have. How can I help them?
Well, thank you for this curveball question.
This wasn't on the list, but it's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah, I answered like 3 of those emails today that we get on a very regular basis, and they might be worded different, but it's down the same lines of what they need help. I don't fit this. What can I do? And it immediately. I go back to what Kevin was saying is show them love and show them that they care, give them the compassion, empathy to be honest with them, which is probably the most important thing. The people try to beat around the bush or gently correct somebody's way, and there's a time for that, but the majority of the time, it just needs to be somebody being honest with them and saying, "Hey, look, this is what we're noticing. What we're noticing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Let's look for, some options." And when they finally come to us, how can I explain that to them, or, how can I get them in your program? Well, just give them the resource. Say, "Here, I found this," and just be straightforward and honest with it with them. I know for me personally, I would appreciate that much more than somebody kind of beating around the bush or trying to trick me into something, which it happens. But just to be honest with them and tell them exactly what's going on, what you see, how you feel.
Yeah.
And
Kevin, how do we support veterans and those in the first responder community who are struggling? And kind of to dovetail off what Brandon just said, how do we show them love? Because I've talked to a lot of spouses who say, "I love my husband, I love my wife so much, I beat them up with this information every single day, and now they don't want to talk to me." That's out of a heart of love. How do you show love, and what do you do when someone doesn't respond to that?
We can really downplay the word prayer. It just rolls off our lips so easily sometimes, but we tend to forget, that when we pray, our words go directly into God's ears. That's what Psalm 18 says. So you just can't go wrong with praying. When you pray for people that you've encouraged, or you have a struggle, maybe trying to get them to the program, where just praying for them. But also too, just words of encouragement, and they can be small. I was at the chiropractor yesterday, and they have my history up on the screen, and it's one of them ones where it's called The Joint. You can go to any one in the U.S. It's kind of a chain of them, and I go to different ones. And the guy found out I was, in the Marine Corps. And he's like, "Thanks for your service." And I'm not looking for that, but I have to tell you, it did feel good. There is some pride there, and when I'm at sessions with the first responders, I tell them, and even the active duty, service members, I let them know that, hey, what you do is a tough job, and we appreciate it, and that can go a long way.
Yeah, that's good. Hunter, you as a donor coordination manager, you spend a lot of time on the phone with donors, and a lot of our donors are not They don't come from the veteran community. They don't come from the first responder community. I know you get these questions a lot because I hear you talking about it or asking, even some of the guys on this call, what to do about it. What are some of the things you say to someone who says, I have a loved one, I care a lot about them, and they need to get help. I just don't know how to get them that help.
Man, that's a hard question because there's 1,000 ways to give them an answer.
You say, let me have someone call you back?
Yeah, this happened today. There was a certain situation today where I had to have one of our instructors contact an individual. So I look at the situation from what the situation is, and I find the best tactic we can use to go after the situation. So it all depends on what the problem is and how we can fix the problem. If someone's trying to get in our program and they feel like they're in a desperate situation, I will contact John Davis immediately and see what.
Yeah, there's not a one size fits all, right? Yeah, that's right. Luis, what about you? You spend a lot of time on the phone as well, and I know when I get these questions, I most of the time ask you to call them back. So, what do you say to somebody, Luis, who's struggling to help those they care about?
Yeah, I would. I have talked to spouses and family members of people who don't know what to do. And the one thing I can always fall back on, I say, listen, if the person that you want to get help doesn't know that you want them to get help, they will never know, because sometimes they just don't want to mention anything about it. And I said, it's going to take some courage, but they're going to have to know that you're concerned and you want to get them help, and also offer our program, and we'll be ready to answer any questions that we may have. So my answer would be is that person who they think needs help, they have to know that someone cares enough to tell them that there's something that needs to be done about what's going on.
That's good. Bill, what do you say?
I'm going to kind of dovetail off of what Kevin said, because sometimes when, a parent or somebody will call, and a lot of times, surprisingly enough, they'll get a hold of Julie, and saying, hey, I know your husband works with this thing. And so I said, well, I'll call him, I'll talk to him. Whoever your loved one is, you know what I mean? I say, here's my name, here's my number, let's call and talk. But a lot of times it's stopping with the person that's concerned and praying with them.
Right.
And saying, well, first of all, let me pray. Let's you and I pray for Smuckatelli. You know what I mean? Let's sit down and pray for him, and a lot of times it's amazing the transformation that happens in the person that's concerned about somebody else. I think prayer is like the fundamental thing that in these times that people are looking at. And quite honestly, the great part about the last 9 months is I've had more time in prayer every day than I have at any time in my life.
Yeah, that's good.
So I would say that volunteering, offering to be open, and always praying is huge.
That's awesome. Connected to that, also not on the list of questions, but as you were talking, I thought about the other side of this is, or are young people who are going into the military right now. I know that, I think all of us except for Hunter. Hunter, when did you go in the Marine Corps?
I joined the Marine Corps in 2014. 2014,
right? Man, you're just like a kid, like a young kid, right? So the rest of us, other than Hunter, went into the military before 9/11, and I think all of us would agree that we have a special place of respect for those who came in after 9/11, knowing what the wars were and where they would go, and we should honor those folks who've done that. Well, now you have a generation of young people who are coming in post 9/11 and in the middle of this COVID thing, which is madness. And I've been asked for years, what should I tell my son or my daughter who's getting ready to go into the military? What's the one thing they need to know as they go into it? And, we applaud military service. It's always difficult. It's unique now and maybe more difficult than ever. But what would you say, how do I phrase the question? What's something you wish you had known before you went into the military that would have helped you, throughout your time? And this may be spiritual, it may be relational, it may be something else, but what's something that you wish you had known? Bill, I'll start with you on that one too.
Sorry, I thought you were going to start with Hunter on that one. I was trying to figure out how Hunter was going to
change up for sure.
I'm going to ask Hunter last because then he'll have an answer.
What I wish I would have known, and it would be a long story, and you don't want that right now, but I wish I would have known that peer pressure is an opportunity. How do I say this? When you stand up to peer pressure and do the right thing, you give other people on out to do the right thing that they always wanted to do. There were a lot of things I did in the Marine Corps initially, to go along with the crowd, to go along, to get along, to cooperate, to graduate, to whatever, right? And it was usually a bad actor trying to influence that behavior. And then as I got older, I said, no, I'm not doing that, right? I just and 20 people that were all going to do it, 16 of them decided, I'm not doing that either. And so what I'm saying is that you're always going to face peer pressure, but you always have to stay true to you.
Yeah.
I guess that would be my comment.
Yeah, that's good. Kevin?
The thing that stands out the most is I wish there would have been some resiliency training back then, because it's so easy a lot of times to claim that victimhood mentality. And one of the things that has impacted me the most and still does with Mighty Oaks, I clicked on your video the other day, Jeremy, one of the ones you posted, the short one where it's don't quit, and we need to be reminded of that, whether it's in your marriage or your job or wherever the case, don't quit. And I found myself repeating that a lot here lately when I have some doubts. And, I was 17 when I went in the Marine Corps, and I definitely could have used somebody to get in my face with their finger and speak some resilience into me and be like, hey, you're going to go through some tough times and it's going to be hard. But it can make you, it can shape you. And God has designed you for where he is sending you. He will equip you to get through it.
No, it's good. Brandon, what do you think?
Me personally, I would, I guess, narrow it down to legacy, understanding what legacy is and how everything falls under that. That was definitely something I never even began to even give any thought to. Like, it just wasn't even on my radar. It just was, okay, I'm doing this and doing that. And because if I would have had the opportunity to know the importance and impact of legacy, I can only imagine all the different decisions and routes I might have taken, and bringing in the importance of faith and how easily I let it go out the window because of a convenience for me at that time, and making that choice of like, okay, well, I'm a Marine now, I'll just put my Christian background on a shelf somewhere, and I without a doubt believe that is exactly what derailed me, and never gave me the opportunity to really take a look at the legacy that I'm gonna leave. Yeah, that's good. Hunter, you may be one of the most prepared people ever who went into the military, because you grew up around the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and you've heard all of the challenges, and you've seen a lot of people and known people who have struggled. So what is something you wish you had known, or something you did know that you reflected on and went, man, I'm really glad I knew that?
I would say peer pressure, going into looking at, like, I knew this was going to be a challenge going into the Marine Corps, because you go into the Marine Corps and you're surrounded by a bunch of dudes that are just getting out of their parents' house and want to go absolutely wild. Yeah. And I'm not going to say I was perfect 100% of the time. By no means was I. But I had the tools in my bag that I was able to use to veer away from giving into that peer pressure constantly. And I feel like a lot of people my age are so vulnerable to giving into the world and giving into peer pressure, especially when you're just getting out of your parents' house and you're 17 years old and you're living in the barracks and you think, heck yeah, I have all this freedom, but then you find out you have a sergeant and then a staff NCO that are going to come down on you when you're being stupid. So yeah, that was my experience, and I'm glad I knew that stuff, and I'm glad I was able to see what a life of what an authentic man and what an authentic warrior was compared to just a regular Joe Schmo, Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli being an idiot.
Right. That's good.
Schmuckatelli.
Luis, as the only Navy guy here, you may not have anything to add here. I don't know. But if you knew someone that was going into the military, sorry. What would you say to that young person that's going into the military today, even the Navy?
Yeah. So this goes along with what a lot of the answers I heard in a way. And the one thing that I wish someone would have come alongside me and walked with me a little bit would be along the lines of discipleship. Do I have a relationship with Jesus? I know that's not popular nowadays. I know that's something that people kind of like shy away from, but that is the most important thing I could have carried into my military career, into life. A lot of decisions have been based on my own personal worldview, and it caused a lot of havoc not only in my life, but in the people I love. And I think it would have been solved had someone come alongside me to mentor me, to disciple me in a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Next question is this one. What books or resources do you recommend to others? Maybe some things that have stood out to you this year, books you've read, podcasts you've listened to, some other resources that you point people toward. Luis, we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, one book that I'm reading right now that I'm almost done with is Relationships by Paul David Tripp. It's actually, the full title is Relationships, A Mess Worth Making. And a lot of it has to do with idols of the heart. What desires that are in my own heart as a Christian that I don't see that take my eyes off of Christ. And inside this marriage that I'm supposed to honor, this sanctity of marriage. And man, that's been an eye opener for me from Paul David Tripp.
Yeah, that's good. Bill?
So my answer is gonna be a little different. Probably until 9 months ago, I'd probably read 2 or 3 books a week. And I haven't read a book since this thing started, except for the Bible. And really, what happened to it? I get up in the morning, I get on my cell phone, check out some financial stuff, check out what's going on in the world, spend some time. And I felt like the Lord said, "Are you putting me first?" So what happened is I changed my whole. I don't pick up anything until I'm done reading the Word in the morning. And it has been again a reawakening and a richness that has come out. I'm reading things that I've never seen before, even though I've read them maybe hundreds of times. And it's just kind of different because I'm the guy that would read like I say, I'd read 2 or 3 books a week, and I haven't read anything. I haven't finished an actual book in the last 9 months.
Yes, it's time in the Word. That's great. Hunter, what about you?
There's a book that all the instructors are given, and I think this is a great book. It's called Trusting God. And Jerry Bridges wrote this book, and I think this book is something that everybody should look at right now during the season. Give it a read, take it for what it's worth, but I feel like it's something that really spoke to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brandon, you've got like a stack of books in your office all the time. What is a book or some resources that you're recommending to others right now?
Oh man, I kind of line right up alongside of Bill with I've started a lot, but it was really hard to stay on one. But I agree with Hunter, Trusting God. New Morning Mercies by Paul David Tripp. It's 365 daily devotional. It's probably one of the easiest devotionals that you can really work through. It's dated for each day. Pretty solid gut checks with some follow-on if you want to go more in depth verses and stuff. And then those two would definitely be very crucial and key for this point of time. And then of course the Bible, actually get into it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Kevin, you're like our resource guy here in the organization because you read everything and listen to everything, I think. What are some that have been especially helpful to you this year or that you've recommended? You sent me a couple books this year as well, and they're all great.
Yeah, I love to read. Definitely would prioritize my Bible reading first, but then, I like to do supplemental reading. And one of the books that's really impacted me this year is a book by Michael Card. It's called Inexpressible, Hesed and the Mystery of God's Loving Kindness. So, the translation in the Hebrew language of Hesed, we can't define it. Scholars have tried to and everything, because you cannot describe God's love. But the closest we can get is steadfast, which means it's never compartmentalized. Like, oh, Kevin's really dinked up today, I don't love him anymore. It's never shut off. His love is just indescribable, and it just opened my eyes and my heart to just this I can't figure God out and his love, and it's good because when I wake up in the morning, I get to be clothed in that every day, no matter if I'm in the pit, on the edge of the pit, or if I'm on the mountaintops. And another one would be there's probably a ton, but one that we've used a lot in the team leader training, and I'm starting to get some of the team leader trainers and some of the more seasoned team leaders is Instruments in the Redeemer's Hands by Paul Tripp. That's a really good book, and it's very good to use, especially in the context of what we do at Mighty Oaks and mentoring and peer-to-peer counseling and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man, that's great. Last question as we finish. We talked a lot about hope, and right now hope is what everyone is looking for and considering. In 2 or 3 sentences, where does someone find hope? Kevin, we'll start with you.
I say this verse a lot. I think every show I've been on, Philippians 3:8, when Paul says in prison, when he's writing this book of joy, he says, I consider all things lost in comparison to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. I got a lot of great things in my life, grandchildren, wife, but there's something in my life that's incomparable, and it's a relationship with Christ. And for that word in there, to know him, that you can have a relationship with him, it's buckets full of hope right there.
Bill?
I will just say that Jesus is the only hope. God is the only hope and the only faith. But here's what I'm going to tell you is he showed me fresh and anew when his disciples came to Jesus. They said, hey, teach us to pray like John taught his disciples to pray. And he said, okay, here, he says, in this manner, therefore pray, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I'm just going to stop there because God tells us to pray to the Father that his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And these certain times, anxiety comes up. I say, you know what, God, I pray that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Your will, not my will, but your will be done on this earth.
That's great. That's great. Hunter?
I would say through an authentic relationship with Jesus Christ. I would say that is the answer where you will find your hope in uncertainty.
That's good. Luis?
Yeah, certainly the answer is in a relationship with Christ, and it's been alluded to, but I would just say it, through His Word, and also in accountability with other men that are like-minded. I think we can't, if we think we isolate ourselves and read God's Word and pray, that's one thing. I think you add another whole aspect when you do that in community, being alongside other believers, so that you can do life together.
Yeah, that's great. Brendan?
Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So if we're looking for hope, for direction, for strength, for trust, that might be the quintessential bumper sticker scripture. But when I really dug deep into that and really looked at what Paul was truly pointing out, it brings so much more clarity than just I can get through today.
That's right.
And I mean, that's easy. Everything that everybody else said falls with that as well, that our true hope and direction and trust comes from Christ in his word, and that his will. And that's my prayer every morning before my feet hit the floor as they're hitting the floor. A part of my prayer is that I just pray and ask God that all of my steps are done in His will. I screw it up a lot, but it's still my prayer. That's how I go.
That's good. That's great. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Fantastic. I appreciate your ministry and your wisdom and the brotherhood that you offer, and I'm glad that we have community and encourage others certainly to find the same thing. And man, thanks for sharing with us. For those of you that are watching, thank you for watching. Please share this out. This is the type of content we try to produce for one specific purpose, and that's to help those who are struggling. We know, and we work in a veterans organization, but we understand that trauma is not reserved for those who've served in the military. It's not reserved for those in the first responder community. Trauma is a life issue. It's something that we all deal with, but the same answer that veterans need to hear, that those in the first responders need to hear, is the answer that all of us need to hear, and that's that hope is found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And regardless of what's going on in the world, there is a way to move forward. And I trust that this has been an encouragement to you. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, listening at Mojo, thank you. Please take some time to go over to our YouTube channel. You can find our channel there. Look for the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, send this and other content out to people that you think might be helped. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.